Hey, George, I don't know if you can hear me. This is Alan, but I'm unable to hear anything. I see you talking, but I can't hear.
I can't either, George.
I can hear you. Guess those of us on Zoom can hear each other.
Okay. Okay, is this going to work?
Yes,
Yes.
I can.
Yes.
Okay, Alan, Sue, you're both on. Okay.
Yes.
All right. We will now go back to okay. So as I was saying, and I'll go back now, what we're going to do is talk about what's new on the internet. And the way we're going to focus on that is we're going to look at our website for the Oakmont Genealogy Club, where there's a long list of things I have, which are links to important websites. We sort of use that to get organized. Then we're going to talk about artificial intelligence in genealogy research. And we'll end with a discussion about what's called chatbots, which is the latest artificial intelligence thing. And what it basically is if you think about when you do searches on the Google kind of search, that what happens is you're looking for a web page that has the words that you're looking for. What the chatbots do is they do all that looking for you and sort of pile it together and bring out the information you've actually asked for. And they do it in natural language format. They don't do it by sending you to a web page. So we'll experiment a little with that and give everybody a sense of how that works. I think it's a very powerful tool. It's only going to get more powerful. Okay. So we're going to go to the oakmontgenclub.org website. And if there's anybody who isn't using the website at all, I really recommend it. We spent a lot of time working on making it effective for us. So, no, okay. Okay, so if you go to oakmontgenclub.org, this is what you're going to see. It's basically, this is called the home page, which will generally just have a summary of what the latest meeting. You most certainly can. You most certainly may. You get to go over to that controller and see if you can figure out how to do it. See the little controller down there? Yeah. Okay. So, well, the first page is basically what we're doing today. And I will remind people that I also pitch Denise Beeson's free classes on the web. Now, those began this last week, but they still got a lot of them to go, and they're very good. Okay. If you click on the upper left corner here, it has different things. Let me hit two of them real quickly. One is recent presentations, which literally is videos and slideshows from previous shows we've done. So for this one, we already have the slides on here. And the reason that's important is in the slides, there are links to things we'll talk about today that aren't on the website. Then okay, we have some for beginners. It's a 2-pager. If somebody's brand new at genealogy, there's some interesting things there. Copy of our newsletters, a guide to the area resources like the Family Search Center, formerly called the Family History Center, or the Downtown Library. There's a history and genealogy branch of the Sonoma County Library that's very valuable, particularly if you're doing California, and absolutely if you're doing regional Sonoma County research. But what we're going to look at instead is the links to the internet sites. So what we've done here is we've got a series of descriptions of the major sites. Now, the number one site, which I'm sure everybody's quite familiar with, I'm not going to spend much time on, is Family Search. There is a lot on Family Search to recommend it. The one thing that I would want to do, so in case anybody doesn't remember how to do a link, so I click on this, which brings me to a Family Search page. You have to sign in. There's no cost to it, but you do have to have a sign in. And okay. Now, once you've signed in, you can do a bunch of searches. You can have a family tree to work with. You could have DNA. What I really want to do is focus for a moment on what's called the wiki. For those who don't remember what a wiki is where a whole bunch of people voluntarily commit information onto the same page. So what is going to happen typically is there will be a page for Sonoma County that, in fact, the Family History Center here in Santa Rosa will have contributed most of the information to. So lots of information. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to go specifically to Poland. So I have to go to Europe. And of course, I have to get one that's way down. Poland. Now, this is where you have to have, your best advice is to have information about where the family you're looking for is really from. So I know there's at least one researcher here who's big into Belarus and what the family is around there. In doing my wife's family, I know that they are from Podlaski. Where is Podlaski? There it is. Podlaski. So this is the equivalent of a state within the country of Poland. Okay, so if you look at it, look at the information that's on here. There's a history. There's this name change. Here is a map. Okay. And important to me is that Lumza was added because Lumza is the area my wife's family is from. And here you can see somewhere down here is Lumza. Anyway, civil records, town of origin, finding aids. Okay, so if you're really looking for work, for information from a particular geographic location, I mean, this is really the way to do it. And by the way, I may have not pointed out, there was one for Poland as a whole. Okay, now, Baptist records, Lutheran records. Now, if you keep going, you will find in some cases some very valuable online databases. Okay, so I have discovered that the one that works for my wife's family is called Genetica. And I'm not going to spend time going there, but what Genetica does is it breaks the Podlaski area down It tells you here's a lot of different places. Here's Podlaski. Okay. Oh, are we having problems with Polish here? Let me go back up because very kindly they go to English. Okay, which for me is quite valuable. All right, so they obviously know where part of their audience is. So what you can see here is that we can do quite a lot of research. We can look for a particular parish. We can look for a province. We can look for names. Okay, and this becomes a very powerful tool for me. The other powerful tool that is generally available for Eastern Europe, and we'll talk about it later, is Jewish Gen. Okay, which while it is predominantly interested in people of Jewish background from Eastern Europe, has a lot of information of a general nature. Okay, so we are going to go back. If I can figure out how to do this. Here we go. So lots of stuff in here, and you can take a look at it. The Family History Center here we'll talk about, but this is a library over on the west side of Santa Rosa. It has it has computers, and it allows access for free to a lot of databases we'll talk about. It costs money otherwise. So if you're willing to go over there during the hours they're open, you can get information for free. You could use those databases, and they usually have experienced researchers who can help you. Okay. Now, my number 2 place I go is Google. And now Google is affiliated with something called Bard. What Bard is it's the chat bot that goes with Google. And I'm going to illustrate that for you when we get to the second half of the discussion. Okay? Okay, well, the next one is the obvious one, Ancestry.com. $229 for an annual US subscription, $319 for the worldwide, sometimes discounted. It is free in the Sonoma County Library for the US version and free in the Family History Center for the world version. So if you're just doing research, yes, Peggy. It's going to depend on which website you're talking about. So for Ancestry.com, your only choices are to be on site, okay? But you could use the Rincon Valley Library as long as you're smart enough not to show up right after school lets out. Okay, or you can go over to the downtown to the History and Genealogy Library. Okay, so these give you, Ancestry.com has a lot of powerful databases and search methods that if you really want to use them, you can get them for free. Okay. On the other hand, if you're like me and this is something that you spend a lot of your life doing, you probably subscribe because it's that powerful. And by the way, it's also the only place to go for DNA. Okay. There are some that are free. I've given you some guidance as to how to get to those. Now, when I first started doing online genealogy, there was a website called Roots Web, and it was a very nice website that volunteers worked up. And it was bought by Ancestry and has died. However, what it was replaced with was something called US Gen Web, US, and World Gen Web, non-US, which actually are pretty good places to look at and see some of the information they have. Once again, it's organized by location within the overall. Now, we get to everybody's weirdest favorite website. And I'm going to recommend, if you are not absolutely familiar with stevemorse.org, that one of your homework assignments is go home, get on the website, and familiarize yourself. So let's go take a look. The history of this is kind of funny. Steve Morse was a major developer in the early computer years. He's credited with doing the software for one of the major IBM generations. Okay. When he retired, he said, what can I do that's fun that involves lots of techie stuff? So he, combined with the second person who helps him, has built a website that has an amazing amount of information. Now, the place everybody gets used to it is if you have family that came through Ellis Island between 1892 or whenever it was in 1922, you want to go here because he and his buddy have developed an ability to take a name and look at all the similar names at the same time. Now, there are ways to do that that have been around for years. But what they did was they looked at it through the eyes of a foreign language. So if you're my wife's grandfather, his name was Kotkovsky. Got it? K-O-T, right? Nope. In at least one census, he shows up as C-H-O-T. Why does he show up as C-H-O-T? Because that's how he pronounced it. Okay? It was pronounced in a way that the census taker didn't hear K, he hears Cha. So often quite different. Well, they have a lot of ability to do that. So there's a lot of good information there. You can go back prior to the Ellis Island period to 1820 and more recent. You can look at manifests for other locations. By the way, you can get one of my wife's favorite pictures is of her grandmother's ship, the ship that brought her across. Okay, it's just, which was scrapped and then taken out of the scrap heap and started up again to bring her load over. And it was scrapped again. But it brought her over. Okay, there's Baltimore, there's Boston, there's Galveston, there's New Orleans, there's Philadelphia. There are sections on Germans, Italians, Russians to America. These are archives that the National Archives has. Census finders. Okay, and I don't want to go into all that, but I want to keep going down. Phonetic matchers, that's the thing I was talking about. So there's a Hebrew soundex. If your name comes out of the Jewish tradition, it will help you find similar names within the Hebrew language. Okay. Canadian censuses, British censuses. Now, the $ means it's probably on Ancestry and you got to pay for it. Now, it turns out Steve's family came from New York City. And so he has lots of information on New York City. Okay. New Jersey, New York City, New York City, New York City. Okay, New York City. We don't have any real New York City family except my brother-in-law's family's from New York, and my wife's great aunt lived in New York. And I was able to find a lot of information for them in here. Okay, and then calendars. So I'm not going to try to make you memorize all this, but I'm saying it might not be a bad idea to look at what this guy's got, because I will tell you it is technically very skilled. So if you can figure what you need, it may be here. Okay, back over to the Genealogy Club. Cindy's list is a list of websites that have genealogy information organized by topic. So she would have a group that is Civil War, and within that Civil War units. So let's say that you knew that your ancestor was part of the 16th Pennsylvania Cavalry. Okay, she might have a link to where you can find information about the 16th Pennsylvania Cavalry. All right, a lot of grave site information, and there are four that I look at because they don't overlap. They overlap. I mean, they don't. One of them doesn't cover everything. Find a Grave is the oldest, and it's very good at what it has done. Okay, but all of these are volunteer based. I mean, people walk into cemeteries and take pictures, and then they put it all online. Billion Graves is doing well. The Sonoma County Library has one called Heritage Hub, which is obituaries. And those are hard to find because the newspaper thing, as we'll talk about in a minute, is hard to do. So I would recommend if you are looking for an obituary, you take a quick look there, okay? If you go to that link, that gives you a place to sign in with your library card, and then you can just click on Heritage Hub. If you are German, German roots is a must. It's got lots of links, lots of information, and it gets updated regularly. My Heritage is trying to compete with Ancestry. They're doing an okay job of it, and they're growing. They're doing some things that are relatively unique. There's a competition going on right now about Catholic church records. Okay. The old New England Historical Genealogical Society, which is now called American Ancestors, okay, has the Boston area Catholic information. And I know that my Heritage has some. I know there are others that Ancestry has. Now, Heritage Quest is interesting. It's again one that is free with your Sonoma County Library card. So again, you go to the library and click on Heritage Quest. Okay. The thing it has that I find quite valuable is it has a number of city directories. Okay, so if anybody's not totally familiar with the city directory, every year, going back into the early 1800s, somebody would publish a directory of everybody who lived in the city. And the idea was that this was something that if you were a salesperson, you would buy because it would help you go door to door and sell your stuff. It would tell what people did for a living. In some cases, it would say who the wife was, etc. Well, if you track people, you get all sorts of combinations. You get a street address for John in 1870, and in 1872, on that same street address, suddenly Mark appears. You suppose Mark may be related to John? Okay, so I did a lot of that in Lynn, Massachusetts for my wife's grandfather, where he has a branch of the family that are half siblings, same mother, different father, so the last name's different. So, okay, newspapers. This is the most frustrating thing in genealogy for me, because once you figure out that you may want to look at a newspaper for 1880 or 1920, you got to find it. And when you find it, you may find that it's on a proprietary website that you got to pay to access, like the New York Times, or you may find it's on one of these other websites. But if you're just generally looking, Chronicling America, which is free, is organized by the Library of Congress. That's good. And there are two other funny ones, Elephant and Fulton County. The Fulton history one says it's all about New York State, but it actually covers a lot of the country. So worth taking a look at. The University of Pennsylvania has guides as to where you can find the papers, etc. So let me just simply say frustrating. Then military, the two big ones are the DAR website. We had a meeting about that. Yes. Well, Ancestry.com is associated with newspapers.com. Okay. And if you have there's a third level of subscription, US, World, and everything. You get a free access to newspapers.com. And they've now indexed that into the main index for Ancestry. But if you find something there and you're not a subscriber, you can't actually pull up the newspaper. But it does give you a lot of information on what is available. And it is very good. Yeah, Peggy. Okay, so Peggy's telling us that one trick she's used that has worked in some cases is to Google father and child together, and sometimes the obituary will actually come up without your having to go through a firewall and having to pay for it. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So military DAR, we had a presentation on that. If you missed that, it's on our website. Yes. Yes. Yep. Yeah. If you go back to Chronicling America, associated with that are state by state sources of the same information. And we just had a discussion here about the California site that goes with that, okay, is actually a pretty robust set of information, along with the comment that, but it can be slow. Welcome to the world. Okay. The other one that is a subscription site, but again, free at the Family History Center, is Fold3. Fold3 has become the repository for lots of federal information related to the military. So, for example, I have a ancestor who fought in the Civil War, who'd also fought in the Mexican-American War, okay? And he had this weird situation where he left his unit during the Civil War to go back and plant crops. When he came back to where the unit was, it wasn't there, but there was a different unit there. So he joined that other unit and finished the war with the other unit. Fine, until he went to apply for a pension. And they said, you can't have a pension. Okay, you're a deserter. We have the record right here. So there's about 50 pages of documentation that's online in Fold3 that you can walk your way through. Here's what I did and when I did it, and here's all the rest. And he did get his pension eventually. So Fold3. If you're into New England, American Ancestors is the place you want to be. That's a subscription site, but it's very good, often on discount to join. California, I would say that the California Genealogical Society is not my favorite. It's not too bad if you need specific information from them, but it's not one that I necessarily recommend as a membership. Yes. Yeah. Yes, they are. That's the website for them. I would simply say that taking out the word free, the answer is it's all online. If you're a member there, you should call because, and I would recommend that, by the way, for almost any of these websites. Most of them have an ability for you to either email or call with a question, and they're very good about getting back. Okay, but I know specifically American Ancestors is very good about getting back. Okay, and they're totally into Mayflower descendants, over the top. Um, Mid-America, there's a place in Allen, um, uh, Indiana, which has a good genealogy library. Then, of course, you get Jewish Gen, which I'm not going to get into, but boy, it has a ton of information. And if you have Jewish heritage from Eastern Europe, there's no question you want to be there. And indeed, it goes beyond that. My son-in-law is Jewish, and his grandfather was killed during the World War II. And they have what's called the Yitzkor books, which are the histories that have been written about people from those periods. And there's an enormously wonderful history about his family on that. His father recently died, and was celebrated in Atlanta as being one of the last living Holocaust survivors in Atlanta. United Kingdom, there's a National Archives website. Find My Past is a really substantial website if you are doing English research. It is a subscription website, but it is really good. Canadian Genealogy, Library of Canada has lots of stuff. Irish, lots of stuff. The one thing, if you're not familiar and you do have Irish background, you want to understand what the tithe books are. That's the third one down there. And I think anybody who has an Irish background probably knows the story, but after the revolution, they gathered all the information from many different places in Ireland to a common repository in Dublin, which promptly burned down in 1922. So almost all the information for Irish has been reconstructed or was stuff that was kept aside. We talked about German roots. We had a presentation on enslaved ancestors, which I would recommend to people. There's a new website called 10 Million Names. Now, think about this from two sides. One side is, were your ancestors slaves? The other side was, did your ancestors own slaves? And as a subcategory to that, don't forget the Hemingses, Jefferson's other family. Okay, I have members of my family who owned slaves that I have a DNA relationship with. Okay, true for a lot of Southerners. Wikipedia, city directories. If you want to find them, this is a place to look. Living people. I would say this is one of the most frustrating things. If you have living people, it's hard to find them without paying money. So I recommend to you, as best you can, is to do Google and Ancestry and family search and see what pops up. But the websites here, once you find something, they almost always want money. Okay, mapping. I love the Randy, where is it now? Down further. Oh, the Randy Major website. Randy Majors has done a really good job of mapping genealogy stuff onto maps so that you can actually look at, one of the things you can do is look at a geographic location over time and see what counties and states it was in. I think most people have heard my story of, I have a great-great-great-grandfather who was born and died on the same farm. During the time he was alive, he lived in 7 counties in 2 states. And a fun one, if you haven't done it, is surname search. I'm going to pull that up and do Kutkowski. All right, there's Kukovsky. And what they do is show you the places in the world that that name shows up. In this case, it's all in the United States. If I spelled it slightly differently, it would show up also in Lithuania, and with some spelling, it shows up in Brazil, which I've never researched, but that's family. DNA, we've got several presentations. I will be doing another presentation on DNA later this year to bring everybody up to speed. Automated translation. If you are not familiar with it, you probably want to look at translate.google.com. What that has, let me open it up for us. It has the ability to put a language in here, which it can detect, and translate it into another language. So I can take something that is in any one of these languages and translate it into English automatically. And there are people who've been very successful in doing across the ocean research with a cousin, where each person only knows one language, but you use the translator to say, okay, I'll put it in English, translate it to Polish, then I'll send the Polish off to my cousin in Poland. And then they reverse the process. Okay? So that is okay. Now, before I go on to artificial intelligence, do I have any questions or comments they want to add on new websites? Okay, so oh, I didn't do this. We did this with the library card. The Hemingses of Monticello is a book about the family that's the other family of Jefferson, which I have taken out from the local library on an ebook. If you have a library card, they will loan you ebooks, which you can read on your Kindle. If you don't know that, probably a good thing to know. If you just go over to the Rincon Valley Library, they'll give you the information about how to do that. And we talked about that. Okay, so artificial intelligence. We'll talk briefly about photographs. I won't talk further about translation, but how the heck does Google do the translation? The answer is it's using artificial intelligence principles. It knows context, so it knows these words should go together logically. Okay. We'll talk about handwriting analysis. We won't talk about it, but most indexing methods now are using artificial intelligence to basically say, oh, if you were asking for this, maybe you really meant that. So I'm indexing it both ways. DNA analysis, a lot of that is artificial intelligence. So let me start with photographs. So I don't know how many of you know you can do this, but if you have a modern cell phone, you take a picture and there's somebody in the picture you don't want, you just tell the cell phone to get rid of them. And they do it. And you may have a picture, for example, of your grandparents in some complicated setting where all you really want is you want the grandparents. You don't want all the rest of the people. Fine. You can go through this process using artificial intelligence techniques. So okay. Well, you just save the different copy. The way it will usually give you if you are careful about understanding how to do it, it saves two copies, one with and one without. Okay, it's like a lot of almost every photo correction technology gives you the option of save as a duplicate or replace. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna go. There we go. Actually, this might work. Okay. Okay, this is Google Photos. And I want to show you one of the things that Google Photos does quite well. If you put a lot of data photos on the same site, Google Photos will constantly search them to see if it can identify common faces. And then it will group people by that common face. So here I have a set of pictures that are of my sister Mary. Okay, and this is Mary recently up in Lake Tahoe. So that's recent. This is Mary with her family here in San Francisco. Now, I want to go way down. This is Mary as a teenager. And this is Mary with my other sister. Okay. I didn't tell them that's Mary. They told me that's Mary on the right. Okay. Her facial structure doesn't change. Okay. So you can get quite a lot of really good linkages with different generations. After my mother died, I took the remaining photographs she'd never let me have, and I put them on one of these websites for the family. And she had had one picture of her father who got shot dead when she was 2 months old. Okay. And that one picture, I found 3 more. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So a very common example for me is basically I'm going to start with a modern picture of somebody that I actually recognize, modern being 1950. Okay. But I know who that is. Okay. Then I go back and back and back, and I can find that person in 1905. As long as it can tell who's which. Okay. If I pull up this one, it will say Mary and Ruth. Okay. Don't say Mary and Ruth. Matter of fact, let me. Mary and Ruth. Okay. And those are the more current pictures from Mary and Ruth. Okay. And I'll just do that for everybody. All right. Well, speaking of all that, let me go to a different website. This is my heritage. I got to find my heritage. Here we go. Okay. My Heritage is an interesting website that basically has a structure where once you sign in, you create a web page for your family. And that's actually free. Now, the problem is if you want to do anything elaborate with it, you got to pay. Okay, but you can get it for free. Now, viewing photos. Okay, so I'm not going to log in. Let me just go back. Okay, do you see the two photos that are here? Okay, the one on the left, that's my grandfather, grandmother, his brother, and her sister. And if you want to have a fun time with DNA, have a situation where you have double first cousins. Okay, and with all the little kids taken around 1912. On the left is the original, on the right is the color version. You can colorize. That's an easy thing to do on some of these photo sites. All of that involves artificial intelligence. Okay, the AI is saying that's a face. I know what kind of color a face should be. I may tint it a little bit, depending on the quality of the photo. Okay? Yes. And they have movement. Yeah, I almost did one of those. Okay. All right, let's see. It is time to move on to the wonderful world gotta do this in a way that, okay, I'm gonna have to sign off for a second. Where we're gonna go now, okay. So let's see if I have this set up properly. If I don't, the second way I can do it. Okay. So this is my Google search routine now. Oh, I gotta share it. Okay. So I've asked the question whether Daniel Boone's father, Squire Boone, was a Quaker. Okay. That's a very logical. I'm descended from Daniel Boone's sister. So here's the answer. Okay. And that's found on a Encyclopedia Britannica. But this is what the chatbot does. It generates an answer. Okay. So let's look at the answer. Squire Boone was born in England. He joined the North Wales Gwynedd meeting. He went on to this one, married Sarah Morgan. They left Pennsylvania and settled in North Carolina. And Daniel Boone was raised as a Quaker. Okay. That's what a chatbot does for you. It does what I would call a richer version of what you can find in any one website that will be normally in a search. Now, you do have to be careful, as you do with anything online, that things could be wrong. Here it says, after a dispute, the family left Pennsylvania. The dispute happened to be that my ancestor married outside of the church. And the Quakers, being what they were, told Squire Boone, you disown her or you'll have to leave the church. And he said, well, that's an easy decision. Bye-bye. Okay. So let me try another search here. Okay, so I'm interested in information about prisoners who were taken from, and again, here would be the normal search. This is the chatbot search. Okay. And my family was among those who were taken. Okay. So do you get a sense of sort of what kind of a richness you can get if you ask the right question? So I'll ask one. Okay, so what was the population growth in San Francisco between 1840 and 1870? And here's what the chatbot says. The population went from 500 to 150,000. And then more information about it, what it was. Now, since there are probably people here who are from the city or from the area, I can ask a follow-up. So what the follow-up does is it says, either I want more information about something that you just told me, or I want to go diagonal into it a little bit, okay? So maybe I want to ask about the population of California. Anybody have a question they want to ask about San Francisco? Online? Okay. All right. Reset puts it back to the beginning. By the way, if I want to, it will find these searches later for me. Okay. So this, I asked for a haiku about slavery. If anybody's into haikus, that's a haiku. Okay. As this chatbot thing began in November. The very first one ever, which was called ChatGPT, started in November. Okay, and it's just taking the online world by storm. You're going to find chatbots associated with almost everything. I would not be surprised in a couple of years if we don't have one inside the Oakmont website to help you make your way around, help you find what you're looking for. I also believe that in a couple of years, you're going to see major changes to DNA analysis that are going to be based on this technology. Okay, so back to, yeah. Yeah, and what you need to do is you need to search BARD, B-A-R-D, and it will explain to you how to attach it as a attachment to your Google search. And then once you do that, it's there forever. Okay. Search B-A-R-D, Google space BARD. Okay. And then it will tell you how to link it into your Google. Okay. All right. So we're back to the talk. Okay, I meant to show this one. This is a written will, and that is the automated translation of it. Okay. This actually, the technology for this actually started probably 20 years ago when the Vatican said they wanted to record all their files, which go back forever. And so they began having the technology to do this. Then when the 1950 census came up, this was used, and about 60% of the handwritten things were correctly interpreted. And it's getting better every day. Okay. So I have to make a pitch for this. Oakmont Lifelong Learning has a class coming up on AI. The focus of the class is looking at books and movies that have AI components, okay? And then how does that relate to what we're learning now about AI today? Okay, so it's sort of a connection, books and movies. There'll be a couple of movies on the movies, Sunday afternoon movies on this. Now, there's some weird stuff. It is possible, if you have written material from an ancestor, that you can load that into a program, which will then allow you to use the style of language of that person in a communication. So in the loosest sense, you can talk to your ancestor or text back and forth with your ancestor. Okay, Laurel, you have a question?
No,
Okay. Does somebody else have a question? Okay. Now, if that wasn't weird enough, does everybody remember Ed Asner?
yes,
Okay. He passed away last year. Okay. He had cancer. Before he died, he made a number of recordings. And at his memorial service, you could talk to him.
oh, wow.
Now, I don't necessarily recommend that or not recommend that, but I will say that's where we are in AI. Okay, questions about AI? I have one here. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, this whole thing is very powerful. In one of the, there was a talk for those on Zoom about using this for things like doing Wordle. You want to find out what the most common letters in the English language are. And you basically ask the question and you get the answer like immediately. My favorite one recently was we were going to stay in a Hampton Inn in Carson City, Nevada, and I wanted the local phone number. And if you Google the Hampton Inn, Carson City, what you'll get is the 800 number to call in and make a reservation. But when I asked the chatbot, what is the local number for, I got the local number, okay? Because it could figure out what I was looking for. One of the things to me that's most valuable for those of us who are seniors is the chatbots do in fact open up your vocabulary. And sometimes in our modern day and age, we don't necessarily know the vocabulary that people are using. And it will say, oh, when you say this, you also mean that. And I'll give you the answer to both. Now, the last thing is, Gabriel, you're on.
Yeah, how do I upload either a photograph or say a handwritten letter to get it to get the photograph, to find other photographs of that person, or to digitize the
the information on the second one I put in the slideshow. You can find it online in our website.
Okay,
On the photos, I just use Google Photos. I'm sure there are other sites that do the same thing. Okay, but one of the things is, and there was a comment over here. One of the things about the photos is it's most responsive when you have lots of them. Sort of that's obvious, but the more different ways it can look at that person, the more likely it is to find all the other examples of that person.
and you
Not-
put in their name and more information about the person when you do the
Yeah,
photo?
what Google will do from time to time is it will say, there are two things it does. One of which it says, I have a picture here. Is this person the same as Mary? Okay. And then I get to say yes or no. All right. The other thing it will do is it will pull up a picture, and maybe I've identified 3 people and I haven't identified the 4th, or they've identified 3, but they can't identify the 4th. They'll just pick the picture up and say, can you tell me who this person is? Okay, I may or may not be able to do that. But I think for all of us, when we're looking at our old pictures, there are certain pictures that lend themselves to automatically knowing who everybody is. That picture of my grandparents with their brother and sister and the 2 families, just looking at the ages, I can tell you who everybody is. It's, you know, I don't have to have a guidebook. Okay, any other questions, thoughts? Okay, next time is a real challenge, but I think I can do it. I'm going to try to take a look at how best to synchronize different family trees. If you're like me, you may have a family tree on your computer and a family tree on Ancestry and a family tree on something else, and you change one of them. How do you see that the others get changed? So we're going to talk about that. Okay. Thank you all. And we'll see you next month.
Thanks, George.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.